A judge sentenced former Team USA Gymnastics and Michigan State University Dr. Larry Nassar to a maximum of 175 years in prison Wednesday. Nassar had pleaded guilty to 7 counts of criminal sexual conduct. Before the sentencing, he heard impact statements from more than 150 girls and women, many of them victims of his sexual abuse. Their testimony took place over 7 days in court. Dr. John LaPook has more.
I've just signed your death warrant.
After 156 victims had addressed their abuser, Judge Rosemarie Aquilina got her turn.
Your decision to assault was precise, calculated, manipulative.
Before Aquilina imposed the sentence, Larry Nassar addressed her and his victims.
There are no words that can describe the depth and breadth of how sorry I am for what has occurred.
Judge Aquilina did not buy Nassar's apology, reading aloud parts of the letter he had written to her last week.
What I did in the state cases was medical, not sexual. The media convinced them that everything I did was wrong and bad. They feel I broke their trust. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
The judge told Nassar his treatments were not medical and reminded him he had admitted wrongdoing in his plea deal.
Because you are guilty, aren't you?
Vinoo Varghese is a criminal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor. He joins me now with more on this. All right, so Vinoo, there are questions about what was known by Michigan State University, what was known by USA Gymnastics. What are the legal issues that exist in a situation when incidents of sexual assault are reported, but ultimately nothing is done about them?
So some of these incidents apparently go back to 1997, and there were multiple coaches that are actually being named in some of these civil suits. So from Michigan State's point of view, they may look for a legal out, which is whether these suits were properly filed and whether these claims were made in a timely fashion. So this has something to do with the statute of limitations issues. For USA Gymnastics, it's a little different because they had already made some changes to some of their policies in the wake of the investigation that was done as a result of Nassar.
Well, what about individuals as well as Michigan State and USA Gymnastics? Could they be facing lawsuits if it's found that they in any way, shape, or form contributed to protecting this doctor?
So the answer is yes. Some of these people have been individually sued. The bigger question, however, is whether any of these people are going to face criminal prosecution. The university has asked the Attorney General of Michigan to look at this and see whether and conduct the investigation, which is, on their part, is a good move for them. There have been calls for the president to resign, and as I said, some of these allegations go back to 1997. So there may be other statute of limitations issues, but yes, they could all be named.
Well, Judge Aquilina allowed about 150 women and girls to make impact statements in court. How unusual is that, and what does that tell us about the judge's view of this case?
It's extraordinary. I mean, the amount is extraordinary, but that was agreed to in the plea deal, which, frankly, from a criminal defense point of view, doesn't make sense. That he agreed, because he pleaded guilty to seven acts against 7 individuals. Why is it that 150 people were allowed to plead? But that's what he agreed to. So once he agreed to that, the judge had the right to bring them all on. I mean, there's nothing preventing her from doing that. However, the larger issue is the question of her neutrality during all this. She's a judge. She's supposed to be neutral. She could support and give encouragement to the victims, the women, the survivors that came forward. But after each one, she took an opportunity to take a shot at him. I think the judge really loves the camera.
Well, let me ask you about this. The role of Nassar's defense attorney, what role do you think the defense attorney played, given that this was such a high-profile case and you had guilt as almost a foregone conclusion here? He did plead guilty.
Sure, and in that situation, the attorneys have to see what kind of deal that they can get. Allowing him to plead guilty to 7 counts, but allowing 150 people to come in and testify, they had to have known the judge was going to, give this man the max, because that's what happened in the federal case. He was sentenced to 60 years, which is the absolute max, where he could have just faced 5. The judge could have given him 5, but instead gave him 60 on the federal case for the child pornography possession counts. So these attorneys had to make certain calculations, and I think that they conceded too much, because once all these people were allowed to testify, there's no way that the judge wasn't going to sentence him to the max. It's like what happened with Bernie Madoff when he was sentenced to 150 years in prison.
Well, it is a case that you say the judge likes the camera, but this is a case that would have gotten attention regardless of who was sitting on the bench. Vinoo Varghese, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms.